Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
All right, welcome back, Battles, American Civil War, Behind the Battles, continuing on with some profiling and styling. This time, Union Major General John Fremont. You guys might have heard of his name before, but let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, brother. His time in the Civil War is nothing compared to what he did before that, because this dude was an explorer.
Oh.
Explored lots of the West. Him and his daddy-in-law, they believed in manifest destiny and wanted the white people to take over the whole world. Well, rest of the United States for show. He was going on expeditions with Kit Carson and all these kind of guys. Did like 4 or 5 of them. And then he was the founder of the California Republican Party, and he was the first Republican nominee for president of the United States in 1856.
Look at that shit.
And he was the first United States senator from California. He did it all. John Charles Frémont. He was born January 21st, 1813. His daddy, Charles Fremont with no T.
Oh.
He was a French-Canadian immigrant who made a living as a school teacher. His mom, Anne Beverly Whiting, she was the youngest daughter of a big deal Virginia planter, Colonel Thomas Whiting. Now, her story is so stupid. Her story gets a little messy because at age 17, she married a wealthy guy from Richmond named Major John Pryor, who was in his early 60s.
Oh, shit.
Pryor hired Freeman to tutor Anne, but things took a turn when Pryor found out Anne and Freeman were having an affair.
I mean, it happens.
Caught red-handed, Anne and Freeman, they took off to Williamsburg July 10th, 1811, and later settled in Norfolk, Virginia, bringing along some household slaves Anne had inherited.
Oh, good for her. They ended up in Savannah, Georgia, where Anne gave birth to John, out of wedlock. Pryor wasn't having that bullshit.
Mm-mm.
He put out a divorce petition, Virginia Patriot, accusing Anne of criminal intercourse. The Virginia House of Delegates shut down the divorce, so Anne and Fremont couldn't even legally marry. Just bastards back then.
Right.
In Savannah, Georgia, Anne ran a boarding house to make ends meet, while Fremont, he taught French and also dancing. Their domestic slave, Black Hannah, to help raise young John.
Oh.
Miss Black Hannah.
Well, fast forward to December 8, 1818, Fremont's dad, he died in Norfolk, leaving Anne a widow with John and a few other young kids to raise on a tight inherited income. And she packed up, moved the family to Charleston, South Carolina. And then growing up, John knew his family's scandalous backstory and came from modest roots. Cool. He was proud, kept to himself, and had this restless energy.
Okay.
He was disciplined, but not big on following rules. He was always eager to prove himself.
Right.
People described him as precious, handsome, and daring.
Oh,
He also-
a handsome boy.
He also had a knack for winning over influential folks.
Oh.
Well, you're going to need that if you want to do what you're about to do, buddy.
You ain't kidding. Well, later on, a lawyer named John Mitchell, he helped cover Johnny's early education. In May of 1829, Fremont enrolled at Charleston College, teaching on the side in rural areas. But he got kicked out in 1831 for barely showing up. But he'd pick up a solid foundation in math and natural sciences. Around this very time, he caught the eye of Joel Poinsett, which was a wealthy South Carolinian, and Andrew Jackson. That was his ally. Oh, that's nice. Oh, Andrew Jackson ally, huh? Poinsett.
Jackson Democrats.
Right. Poinsett, he pulled some strings and got Fremont a gig, which he was teaching math on the United States, the USS Natchez, which was a Navy sloop cruising South American waters in 1833. Look at you, bud. Go get some diseases on the old ship.
Right. Well, he didn't stick with the Navy, though. He resigned and took a job as second lieutenant in the U.S. Topographical Corps, surveying a route for the railroad connecting Charleston, Louisville, and Cincinnati.
Oh.
While working in the Carolina mountains, he started dreaming of becoming an explorer.
Oh, like Dora.
Right. Between 1837 and 38, his itch for adventure grew while he was in Georgia. He was doing reconnaissance for the Cherokee Indian removal. Oh, Jesus. It's like, think of a good way we can drive these guys out. You know?
Right.
Make sure the ground is real bumpy.
I guess not this time would be Dora. It would be Carmen Sandiego. Wasn't she around back then?
No.
No. When Poinsett became Secretary of War, he hooked Fremont up with a sweet opportunity. He said, hey, buddy, I got a sweet opportunity for you. He said, oh, yeah, what's that, Mr. Poinsett? You're going to assist Joseph Nicolet, which was a French explorer and scientist. He wants you to help with him with mapping the lands between the Mississippi and Missouri rivers. Fremont became a top-notch topographer. He trained in astronomy and geology. And he got really, really good at describing plants, animals, soil, and even water resources.
Hey, man. That water is wet.
Nice.
He does have about 3 dozen plants named after him, though. So.
Oh, that's nice. He racked up serious frontier experiences, crossing paths with folks like Henry Sibley, Joseph Ranville, J.B. Faribault, Etienne Provost, and even the Sioux Nation.
Oh,
you got to see how
we are the nation of Sioux Nation.
Yeah, you got to see how the Sioux lived.
So Fremont's out there doing his exploration thing with Nicolet, and that's how he crosses paths with this big shot senator from Missouri, Thomas Hart Benton. He's the head of the Senate Committee on Military Affairs, so he's got some serious clout within the military.
Clout. Look at that.
Benton, he invites Fremont over to his place in Washington, and that's where Fremont meets Jessie, who's Benton's 16-year-old daughter.
He's a loner. She likes to be alone.
They're obviously really into each other, but Benton's not thrilled at first because Fremont's not exactly high society. And that's a problem for a big wig guy like Benton.
Yeah.
Can't be marrying my daughter.
Right. It's like
What the fuck?
Rose and Jack.
Or even, who was it? It's either Jeb or somebody wasn't,
Right.
James Longstreet or one of these guys wasn't good enough, and then they eventually came around.
Right. Well, as always, love wins out.
Love wins out.
Unless you're Romeo and Juliet.
Well, kind of did, I guess, but not really.
Right. 1841. He's 28 years old. He and Jessie, they just go for it. They're like, let's do it. We're just going to elope. And we're going to see the Catholic priest see if he'll do it. And sure enough, the Catholic priest said,
it's kind of weird because usually the Catholics, you need to do like a whole thing.
Right. Well, Benton, he's livid when he finds out. He's furious, but deep down, he's crazy about his daughter. So he comes around eventually. He's like, I see you, my baby girl. You just make sure that piece of shit's cutting wood or something when I come around.
The typical scene in a movie, the wife comes up to him. If you push her away, she's just going to keep going further.
He's like, I know. Not only does he accept the marriage, but he becomes Fremont's biggest supporter. He does. He has to.
He does.
He is his personal cheerleader.
Basically.
He's like, hey, man, I hope you do good because that takes old Jesse with you, buddy. All right.
Well, you see, Benton's a heavy hitter in the Democratic Party at this time. He runs the show for the Senate for over 30 years at this point.
Damn.
He's all in on this idea called Manifest Destiny, 1830s.
1830. Damn.
He's all in on this idea called the Manifest Destiny, which is basically the belief that the United States is meant to own the whole North American continent, east to west, north to south, all of it. Oh, yeah, this Manifest Destiny is like a total crusade for him and all other politicians like him. And now Fremont's part of it, too, thanks to his new daddy-in-law. Benton uses his influence to push through funding in Congress for these massive surveys of places like the Oregon Trail, Oregon Country, the Great Basin, and the Sierra Nevada all the way to Cali.
Oh.
And guess who's going to head up 3 of these? You know it. You guessed it. Oh, Johnny Boy himself.
Oh.
Benton hooks him up with the leadership gig, the money, and all the political backing he needs.
Damn.
Talk about a family connection, huh? You can't get... Look at this guy. Didn't want him to marry, and he's like, you're going to do something with your life.
And we thought the mob started in 1920s.
Right.
Back in 1804, the American West started opening up big time.
Big time.
You had the Lewis and Clark expedition
Or
to
Lewis.
kick things off. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, they were the guys leading it, obviously. That's why it's the Lewis and Clark expedition. Plus Pocahontas or something, right?
Yeah.
They're heading to explore the brand new Louisiana Purchase they just got from France.
Wasn't Pocahontas, it was Sacagawea.
Yeah, it's like, they're going out to explore the brand new Louisiana Purchase that old France said, take it. Yep, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
Little did they know. Well, guess
kind of wasn't.
Right.
It's farmland.
Fucking tornadoes everywhere. Son of a bitch. Their mission, well, they wanted to find a northwest passage from the Mississippi River all the way to the Pacific Ocean.
Or the Missouri, but yeah.
Yep, same thing. Not at all, but what are you going to do? This was all part of President Thomas Jefferson's big dream of a Western empire.
Yeah.
He didn't stop there, though. He also sent Zebulon Pike on the Pike expeditions to check out the Southwest as
He said
well.
we're going to go south-north, or south-north. We're going to go northwest, southwest.
I don't know which would be worse. constantly going up and down that river, or being in the freaking dry-ass heat of Arizona.
Indian territory as well.
Yeah, that's rough, New Mexico.
Fast forward to the 20s.
Really the kid.
Well, not in the 20s, but fast forward to the 20s, you got American and European fur trappers like Peter Skeen Ogden, Jedediah Smith, Jedediah Springfield roaming around, mapping out tons of the West.
Right.
These guys were trailblazers. Yeah. Then comes John, who would later get the nickname the Pathfinder.
Oh, damn.
He took what those earlier explorers did and ran with it, adding his own flair. He was a beast at documenting everything. His scientific reports, publications, and super detailed maps made the West feel like a place anyone could pitch your head into.
Yeah.
So that was his job. They wanted people to go.
Don't want to half-ass it and shit. Started in 1842. Fremont led 5 major expeditions out west. But guess what? It gets wild from here.
Yeah.
Between his 3rd and 4th trips, the old Mexican-American War said, guess what, boys? We're fighting for Texas, California, and New Mexico, and Arizona, Oklahoma. And that totally flipped his career upside down. Before that, his early explorations were inspiring people like crazy.
Like we need to check out this lands.
His reports, co-written with his wife Jessie,
Yes.
had this romantic vibe that got folks hyped to pack up and move out west.
And get slaughtered on the
He
way.
didn't mention anything about the Indians. In 1846, the Senate published 7 maps based on his work.
Crazy.
Those became the ultimate guide for thousands of emigrants. They literally mapped out the whole Oregon Trail.
Yeah, man.
Fucking cholera and all.
All right, time to get into these expeditions. With the first one, Nicolette,
There ain't no movies made about this guy.
I'm sure there is.
Well,
Nicolette got too sick to keep exploring, and they tapped John Fremont to take over. His first big trip in 1842 was set up by Senator Thomas Benton, obviously, Lewis Lynn, and some other guys who were all about snagging the Oregon Territory.
right.
Plan was to head out in the summer, check out the Wind River in the Rocky Mountains, scope out the Oregon Trail through the South Pass, figure out stuff like how fertile the land was, where to put forts, and what the mountains in Wyoming were like.
Oh, just like they were in Colorado.
Right. Oh, and on this trip, by total luck, he ran into Kit Carson. We're probably going to do an episode on this guy, not on this podcast, but our other podcast. Outlaws and Gunslingers.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Kit Carson. He's a legendary mountain man. He ended up being his guide on this trip, and he would take a couple more with him, too.
He didn't have a beard, though.
Grizzly Adams did, though.
Right. Fremont, Carson,
That's a real guy, by the way.
yeah. Fremont, Carson, and their crew of 25. They kicked things off on June 15th, 1842. Starting at the Kansas River. They followed the Platte River up to the South Pass. Then from Green River, they dove into the Wind River Range. Fremont even climbed his massive ass up a Fremont even climbed this massive 13,745 foot peak, which is now called,
You guessed it.
Johnson's Peak. Fremont's Peak. He also stuck an American flag up there and basically claimed the Rockies and the West for the United States of America.
Good for you, Johnny boy.
Nice. On the way back, they got a bit reckless. They were rafting the swollen Platte
Yeah, dude.
and lost a bunch of their gear. Still, the 5-month trip was a total win. Fremont got back to Washington in October. Him and his wife put together this report of the exploring expedition to the Rocky Mountains in 1843. It got printed in newspapers everywhere. People ate that shit up. Didn't like the way the ink tasted, but what are you going to do? Fremont's take on the West wasn't all danger and doom. It was this big, wide open spaces, inviting place ready for settlers.
Mountains and vast fields and
Right.
just streams and rivers and lakes and
Fantastic and Mormons.
right.
This vision that he got portrayed in the newspaper, it got folks seriously excited. Like we
did.
said, we're packing up our shit and we're going to head out west. Real women, something in fake breasts.
After Fremont totally crushed it on his first expedition, he was back at it again for a second one starting in the summer of 1843. This time, way bigger plans. It was to map out the second half of the Oregon Trail, find a different route to South Pass, and keep pushing west to the Pacific Ocean along the Columbia River in Oregon country.
Hey, he ain't made it to the Pacific Ocean yet.
Fremont, he rounded up almost 40 guys, geared up, and they kicked off from the Missouri River in May. Then he stirred up a little bit of drama by snagging a 12-pound howitzer cannon in St. Louis. Took it with him on the road.
It's a bold move, Charlie. Holy shit.
Oh, he's going to do some stuff.
Yeah. He brought back Kit Carson. The guy's skill were unreal, he said. Carson joined the crew on the Arkansas River. They tried to find a new route through Colorado, the South Pass, but didn't work. So they stuck to the regular Oregon Trail. They cruised past the huge 1843 migration. They made a pit stop to check out the northern part of the Great Salt Lake.
Great Salt Lake.
Then they're like, let's go to Fort Hall. And after that, Fort Boise. Before rolling into Marcus Whitman's mission on the Walla Walla River.
The Walla Walla River.
By the Columbia. Fremont's stamina and grit on this long haul were next level.
This guy doesn't stop.
Nothing seemed like it until the Detroit Lions. Right?
Right. Following the Columbia west, they got a glimpse of the Cascade Range, spotted Mount St. Helens as well, and Mount Hood.
Damn.
They hit the Dallas on November 5th, and Fremont peeled off to Fort Vancouver, which is run by the Hudson's Bay Company to grab supplies. From there, his crew kept going and reached Sutter's Fort in Sacramento Valley by March of 1844.
Damn. Fort Vancouver is run by the Hudson's Bay, which is 2,500 miles away.
Right.
Damn.
Instead of heading back to St. Louis at this time, Fremont was like, we're going to keep exploring. He wanted to go scope out the Great Basin between the Rockies and the Sierras, chasing Benton's big dream of claiming the West for the whites.
Oh, that's nice.
West for the whites!
Right. There's a lot of buffalo over here, guys.
Right.
So they went south along the eastern side of the Cascades, hitting a lake Fremont named Pyramid Lake. Sticking to the east of Sierra Nevada, they pushed down to what is now Minden, Nevada. And they reached the Carson River on 18th January.
Is that named after Kit?
Maybe, 1844. Then they're like, let's keep on moving west, boys. They braved that snowy Sierras. Fremont became one of the first Americans to lay eyes on Lake Tahoe.
Lake Tahoe, now a fucking rich
It's crazy.
getaway.
Waste. Carson stepped up big time, though, this one.
Big time.
He guided them through a new pass. And Fremont named it Carson Pass.
Look at that.
And this one's for you, buddy. This one's for you.
Then they rolled down the American River to Sutter's Fort, which is known as Nueva Helvetia at this time in early March. John Sutter, the Swiss-Mexican dude who built the fort, and later became American after a treaty. Oh.
A Swiss-Mexican guy, huh? That must be kind of cool.
Right. He hooked Fremont's crew up with fresh supplies. While there, Fremont chatted with American settlers. They were popping up everywhere. And he figured out that Mexican control over California was super shaky. He's like, let's go. They're a little vulnerable over there.
Right. There's not much going on. You know, Mexicans are staying down there. And from Sutter's Fort, Fremont, his squad, they headed south along the east edge of the San Joaquin Valley. They crossed the Tehachapi River. Nope. They crossed the Tehachapi Pass and the Antelope Valley. They hit the Spanish Trail near modern-day Victorville, California. Then they went northeast through what's now Las Vegas.
Jeez.
They went through Utah, and they went back to the South Pass.
Jeez, dude.
Everywhere. I've been everywhere, man.
Literally.
While exploring the Great Basin, Fremont confirmed that it's all land. There were no rivers that flowed out to the sea. Oh, wow. That was a big deal.
From the Great Basin, right?
Right. That was a very big deal because it cleared up a ton about North American geography and it killed those old myths about a Buenaventura River running from the Great Basin to the Pacific. Guess what?
No, sir. After checking out Utah Lake, they kept moving until they hit Bent's Fort on the Arkansas River. Finally, August of 1844, after over a year traveling abroad, well, I guess it could be abroad, basically. Fremont and his crew, they made it back to St. Louis.
Oh.
Back in Washington. Fremont and Jesse, they whipped up another report. Packed with scientific details showing the Oregon Trail wasn't that tough to travel, and as well as hyping up the Northwest fertile land. You guys go here, you make a living.
Right.
The Senate and the House were so stoked. The Senate and the House were so excited, they ordered 10,000 copies printed to spread the word to the press and the public, pushing hard for national expansion.
Fuck yeah, man.
Fremont's vision was seriously firing people up. They said, we got to go and see this.
Get that shit. With the United States gearing up for possible war with Mexico, and James Polk, fresh in the White House, Senator Benton didn't waste any time and got Fremont set up for a third expedition. The official plan was straight from the War Department. They wanted Fremont to survey the Central Rockies and then the Great Salt Lake area, then move on to parts of the Sierra Nevada. Back in St. Louis, Fremont pulled together a legit crew of 60 armed guys with Kit Carson as his guide. Plus, he had two badass scouts, Joseph Walker and Alex Goody.
Goody?
Yep.
Here's the good part, though. Benton and the Secretary of Navy, George Bancroft, They quietly told Fremont that if war with Mexico popped off, he should flip his mission into a full-on military operation. Polk, who had met with Fremont at a cabinet meeting, was dead set on grabbing California. Fremont, he was all in, dreaming of conquering California for its beauty and riches.
I bet he was.
No, he'd have to explain some shady moves there later, because he does some stuff.
Right. It was the 1st of June, 1845. Fremont and his people, they rolled out to St. Louis, aiming first to find the source of the Arkansas River on the east side.
Gateway to the west.
So they headed west as usual, swinging by Bent's Fort, hitting the Great Salt Lake, and taking the Hastings Cutoff. When they got to the Ogden River, Fremont renamed it the Humboldt.
He said, I'll do whatever I want.
Right. He split his party into two to cover more ground. Makes sense. And to gather extra intel. But when he reached the Arkansas River, Fremont, he made this very bold move. He blazed a trail straight through Nevada to California. He linked back up with the other half of his crew at Walker Lake in west central Nevada, ready to make some serious moves.
All right, well, he took 16 of his guys, split off from the other group again, rolling into Sutter's Fort in the Sacramento Valley December 9th. Right away, he started hyping up the American settlers there, getting them all fired up with patriotic vibes that this is our land.
Nice.
He straight up promised them that if war with Mexico popped off, his crew would have their backs. We got you.
Damn right.
Then they headed to Monterey saying he needed more supplies, but he was readily there to meet with the American consul Thomas Larkin and the Mexican commandant Jose Castro.
Okay.
Oh.
Wow. By February of 1846, Fremont, he linked back up with his 45 men near Mission San Jose, which gave the United States a pretty solid military presence in Cali. Castro and the Mexican officials, they weren't even buying Fremont's act. They were suspicious and told him to get the hell out of the country.
Get out of here, gringo.
He said, okay, but he didn't leave. He and his guys, they set up camp near the top of what's now called Fremont Peak. In pure defiance, he raised the United States flag right in the face of the Mexican authority.
Talk about a power move, huh?
Yeah, total.
Well, as you would think, things get tense after that, and a 4-day standoff with Castro's bigger Mexican force.
So did this guy start the Mexican-American War?
He definitely had a part in it. Fremont decided to bail and head north to Oregon. On the way, his crew got caught up in what's called the Sacramento River Massacre.
Oh, shit.
The details are messy. Some of Fremont's guys, like Thomas Breckenridge and Thomas Martin, they say they killed 120 to 150 or even over 175 Native Americans.
Damn.
Another witness, Tustin, he claimed it was 600 to 700 killed on land, plus another 200 in the water.
Shit.
No records of any kind show Fremont's men getting hurt or killed in this. Kit Carson, who was part of the attack, he later called it a perfect butchery.
Wow.
Jeez, dude, just going slaughtering people for no reason.
Assholes. Well, Fremont and his group, they kept moving, eventually camping at Klamath Lake. But they're still clashing with the old Native Americans, killing some on sight as they went.
For nothing.
Right. On May 8th, Lieutenant Archibald Gillespie, he caught up with Fremont, coming straight from Washington. Damn. He handed over dispatches he already given to Larkin, plus secret orders from Benton and Buchanan that basically said, get aggressive, war with Mexico's coming. That very next day, 9th of May, 1846, Native Americans, they ambushed Fremont's camp.
Yeah.
Pissed off about all the killing of their men. They're like, you killed our women and our children and our
guys
and our teepees.
They got Fremont because they killed 3 of his guys in their sleep, including a Native American who was traveling with him.
Yeah,
traitor.
Yeah.
Fremont hit back hard, attacking a Klamath fishing village called Dakwas the next day in what's now known as the Klamath Lake Massacre.
Oh, yeah.
Problem is, though, those people might not even have been involved in the ambush. They didn't care.
Fuck.
The village at Williamson River and Klamath Lake Junction got completely wiped out May 12th with at least 14 people killed.
Fremont, he was convinced the old British were behind this, arming and egging on the Native Americans to attack his crew and any American they see. Things got wilder when Klamath Warrior almost took out Carson after his gun misfired. The warrior was about to shoot a poison arrow, but Fremont saw that and charged in, trampled the guy with his horse.
By poison, they mean literally covered in shit.
Yeah. Carson was like, holy shit, you saved my life, man. Thanks.
I owe you.
Right. A few weeks later, Fremont and his armed militia, they doubled back to Cali, ready for whatever was next. Oh, shit.
Well, Fremont and his armed crew, they're back in Mexican California, headed south, pulled up at Peter Lassen's Rancho Bosquejo. May 24th, 1846.
I guess some bar or something.
While there, he got word from Lassen that the USS Portsmouth under Captain John B. Montgomery, hey, we'll get to him, right?
Yeah.
Civil War guy. He was docked at Sausalito. Fremont, he sent Lieutenant Gillespie to Montgomery with a shopping list. He said, get me 8,000 percussion caps, 300 pounds of rifle lead, keg of gunpowder, and some food, because we're about to go back to St. Louis here. Well, May 31st, he set up camp on the Bear and Feather Rivers, about 60 miles north of Sutter's Fort, where a bunch of American immigrants, itching to rebel against Mexican rule, joined his squad. From there, his group launched another attack on local Native American rancheria, or settlements. That became known as the Sutter Buttes Massacre. Geez, how many massacres can you get out there, Fremont?
A lot. By early June, Fremont was pretty sure that war with Mexico was a done deal. So instead of bouncing back to St. Louis, as he has planned, he teamed up with Sacramento Valley insurgents in this low-key silent partnership. 10th of June, Fremont, he stirred the pot. 4 of his guys, plus 10 rebel volunteers, they jacked 170 horses meant for Castro's army. Brought them back to Fremont's camp. Historian H.H. Bancroft, he says that Fremont was very sly about it, indirectly nudging the American settlers to revolt against being too obvious.
He's like, somebody ought to just go down there and steal a bunch of their horses and show them what's up.
Wouldn't it be a shame if they just didn't have those horses anymore?
Well, then, June 14th, 34 armed rebels, acting on their own, supposedly, they took over Sonoma, which is the biggest settlement in Northern California, and they forced Colonel Mariano Vallejo and 3 others to surrender. Oh, a colonel.
Nice.
The next day, these rebels, who the Sonoma locals called Osos, which is Spanish for bears, they got a little drunk on brandy, threw together a rough flag, and declared the Bear Flag Republic, picking William Ide as their leader.
Look at that shit.
The 4 prisoners were hauled 80 miles to Fremont's camp on the American River. Fremont, he played it cool, publicly denying any involvement in the raid, but the prisoners were sent south to Sutter's Fort, where Sutter locked them up on Fremont's orders anyways.
Right.
So said, now that we got them.
All right, can't let them go back and tell the old government of Mexico. Around this very time, Fremont, he started signing his letters as military commander of the United States Forces in California. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, this guy.
Ooh, that's a big flex. 24th of June, word got out to Fremont that a Californio named Juan Padilla, he had captured, tortured, and mutilated 2 Osos.
Oh, no.
And then he killed them and was holding others hostage. Fremont said, oh, hell no. He grabbed a crew and rode to Sonoma, arriving on the 25th of June. The very next day, Fremont, his men, Lieutenant Henry Ford, and some Osos, 125 men total, headed south to San Rafael, hunting for Captain Joaquin de la Torre and his Lancers, who were supposedly ordered by Castro to hit Sonoma. Guess what? All that looking, didn't find them.
Didn't find him at all. June 28th, Castro from across San Francisco Bay, he sent a rowboat to Point San Pablo in San Rafael with a message for De La Torre. Kit Carson, Granville Swift, and Sam Neill, they rode to the beach and intercepted 3 unarmed guys who came ashore. These were Don Jose Berriesa and the 20-year-old De Haro twins, Ramon and Francisco, who were sons of Don Francisco De Haro. Okay. These 3 were killed in cold blood. Who exactly pulled the trigger is still debated, but later accounts point to Carson doing it, likely on Fremont's orders, or at least with a little nudge. I'd be ashamed if someone killed these guys. Fremont.
Yeah, that was crazy, but that was a rough scene.
Right.
The 1st of July, Commodore John Sloat, who was running the United States Navy's Pacific Squadron, he sailed into Monterey Harbor with orders to lock down San Francisco Bay and to block all other California ports as soon as he was 100% sure that war with Mexico was on. The 5th of July, he got a message from Captain Montgomery, filling him in on the Sonoma takeover, and Fremont's rolling it. Sloat, thinking Fremont was acting on direct orders from Washington, started executing his plan.
Oh, shit.
Early, 7th of July, 225 sailors and Marines from the USS Savannah and 2 sloops, the USS Cyan and the USS Levant, they rolled into Monterey looking for trouble. Took it without firing a shot, though.
Nice.
And they raised the United States flag happily.
Well, if war with Mexico wasn't on before, it's definitely on now.
Wow, Sloat had his proclamation read out loud and posted in English and Spanish, basically saying, California, guess what? United States now, baby.
Oh.
That's crazy.
Jeez. Well, July 10th, Fremont, he got word from Montgomery that the Navy had taken Monterey and Yerba Buena. 2 days later, Sloat sent Fremont a letter describing the Monterey capture and telling him to bring at least 100 armed guys to Monterey. Fremont, he showed up with 160. July 15th, Commodore Robert Stockton, he sailed in to take over from the 65-year-old Sloat as head of the squadron. Sloat made Stockton commander-in-chief of all land forces in California. July 19th, Fremont and his crew, they rode into Monterey and met Sloat on the Savannah. When Sloat figured out Fremont had been acting on his own without clear orders from Washington, he was shook and ducked out to his cabin. He said, oh no.
Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
Pussy. 23rd of July, Stockton took Fremont's group, plus former Bear Flaggers, officially turned them into the Naval Battalion of Mounted Volunteer Riflemen.
Wow.
With Fremont as major in charge of the California Battalion. This was a crew he'd built from his survey team and Bear Flag Republic volunteers. About 428 men. Stockton hooked them up with official United States military status and soldier pay. Look at that
This
shit.
guy just weaseled his way into the Army, dude.
I'm going to war.
Right. Well, Fremont, with about 160 of his men, hopped on a ship to San Diego, teamed up with Stockton's Marines, and took Los Angeles August 13th.
Nice.
After that, Fremont headed north to round up more Californians from his battalion. Later in late 46, Stockton sent Fremont with 300 more men to capture Santa Barbara, taking everything. But by September, some Mexican Californians, led by Jose Maria Flores, they weren't having it, and they fought back, retook Los Angeles, and kicked the Americans out.
Oh.
Things are heating up in this little California region with the old Mexicanos.
Right. Go to war. December 1846, United States Brigadier General Stephen Kearny showed up in Cali with orders straight from President Polk. After taking New Mexico, Polk told him, go get California, baby. And if he could conquer it all, we're going to set up a civil government
So
there.
we're going to have a formal government here. Then
Yeah.
lay claim for real.
Kearny had already cut his force down from 300 to 100 dragoons, based on dispatches from Kit Carson that he was carrying to Washington. Carson's intel said that Stockton and Fremont had California under control.
Oh, did they though? Clearly.
We're good. We're all set for this fake gold boom you guys are going to set up here in a couple of years. What Carson didn't know was the Californians had revolted. And that set Kearny up for a rough fight at the Battle of San Pasqual. Mexican lancers were waiting and ready to fight. It was a disaster. Kearny lost 19 guys. He got seriously stabbed himself. That makes sense. Fighting Mexicans get stabbed.
I stab you so bad, you wish I not stab you so bad.
Later, Stockton sent reinforcements to push back Pio Pico and his crew, which helped Kearny out. I bet it did.
Around this time, things got messy between Stockton and Kearny over who was calling the shots for the military. Of course, still, they figured out how to team up to squash the Los Angeles uprising.
Gotta.
Meanwhile, old Fremont, he was doing his thing on the night of December 24th.
Oh.
He led his unit through a crazy rainstorm over the Santa Ynez Mountains at San Marcos Pass. It was a mess. Tons of his horses, mules, and cannons slid down the muddy slopes. But the next morning, his crew pulled it together in the foothills, which is now near Rancho del Ciervo. And they took the Presidio, a city basically, of Santa Barbara and the town without a single shot fired.
Oh.
A few days later, Fremont, he marched southeast towards Los Angeles. He said, we're taking it back, baby.
Taking it back, baby. This happened on the 13th of January, 1847. Fremont sealed the deal by accepting Andres Pico's surrender with the Treaty of Cahuenga, which ended the war in Upper Cali.
Nice.
But here's where it gets spicy, folks.
A little spicy.
Kearny ordered Fremont to join his military dragoons, but Fremont was like, nah, I'm under Stockton's command, baby.
Oh, and you guys, they already don't like each other.
Right. He straight up refused, thinking he answered to Stockton, not Kearny. And drama was a brewing. Kearny's like, bitch, I'm your superior.
I run
motherfucker."
shit. Well, January 16th, 1847, after the Treaty of Cahuenga, Commodore Stockton named Fremont the military governor of California, and then he said, I'm getting out of here. Fremont, he was running things smoothly for a few weeks, but he was strapped for cash to actually do the governor gig. What he and Stockton didn't know was that the Navy Department had sent orders to Sloat and his replacements to set up a military rule in California.
Well, there was a problem there. Those orders came after Kearny's orders to take charge of the place, which Kearny didn't have enough troops to enforce his authority. So he had to lean on Stockton's Marines and Fremont's California Battalion until more Army guys showed up. So he might have been in charge, but he wasn't.
Right.
On the 13th of February, Washington, they were like, all right, we're going to send some specific orders. We're going to give them to General Winfield Scott. Kearney, you got the green light to be the military governor.
Oh.
But Kearney didn't exactly slide those orders over to Fremont to keep him in the loop.
Well, Kearney did tell Fremont to enlist his California battalion into the U.S. Army and to bring all his battalion records to Kearney's headquarters in Monterey. Fremont, though, he was dragging his feet, crossing his fingers that Washington would send word for him to stay on as governor. Plus, his California battalion was like, we're not joining the Army. Why would we do that?
Right.
Fremont even told his guys not to hand over the weapons and rode to Monterey to face Kearney, saying he'd follow orders.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Kearney, he sent Colonel Richard Mason, who was set to take over as military governor. He sent him to Los Angeles to check out on the troops and give Fremont more instructions. But Fremont and Mason were not vibing. But Fremont and Mason, they didn't get along, and things got so heated that Fremont challenged Mason to a duel.
Oh!
They set a date, but it got postponed, never to happen.
Good.
Jeez.
Holy shit.
I imagine. We're going to have a rain check on that duel.
Well, this led Kearney show up in L.A. When Fremont asked to join the fight in Mexico, Kearney shut him down. Instead, he ordered Fremont to march east with his army. When they got to Fort Leavenworth on the 22nd of August, 1847, Fremont was arrested and hit with charges of mutiny.
Damn, he sent him over there to get arrested.
Yeah, disobeying orders, acting like he had more power than he did, and a lot of other shit. Kearney sent him to Washington to face a court-martial. In the end, on the 31st of January, 1848, Fremont cleared a mutiny, but got nailed for disobeying the superior officer and military misconduct.
Well, you should.
Right.
Who are you anyways, guy?
Right.
Well, after the court-martial, President Polk, he stepped in and softened the blow for Fremont. He agreed with the court's ruling, but didn't think Fremont was guilty of mutiny, just disobeying orders.
Right.
So Polk canceled the dishonorable discharge and let Fremont back into the Army, mostly because of his war contributions. He did do a lot.
Good for you, bud.
Also, Polk was trying to keep Fremont's father-in-law, who was big shot Senator Thomas Benton, happy, since Benton was convinced Fremont was innocent.
Right.
And likely a big donor of Polk.
Most likely.
But Fremont wasn't thrilled with just a partial pardon. He resigned his commission in protest and decided to just settle in California.
Okay, I'm done fighting.
Yep.
I'm going to watch this shit.
Even after all that, though, the American public at large said, we still like Fremont.
Right.
We still like him. He did all these maps and stuff for us.
So as usual, historians, they're hit and miss with the guy.
Of course.
Mary Lee Spence and Donald Jackson, who edited a huge collection of letters from Fremont, and others during this time, they said that Fremont is often right as wrong. Well, it happens.
Fitty.
Right. They also pointed out that digging into the court-martial records shows nobody, neither Fremont nor his opponents, came out looking great. So, I mean, it was just a shit show from the very beginning. Well,
Politics, man.
Right. Well, then there's this historian, Alan Evans, who paints Kearney as a tough, prickly guy who didn't make many friends.
Well, yeah. He quotes historian Justin Smith, all right, historian,
All right.
who called Kearney grasping, jealous, domineering, and harsh.
Ooh.
With that kind of personality, plus this thing of getting whooped at San Pasqual, and his obsession with being in charge, Kearney clashed hard with Stockton as soon as he hit Los Angeles. Yeah. Fremont, he got sucked into the fight, and when Stockton left, Fremont, he was the one dealing with the whole mess. Kearney taking his frustrations on Stockton out on Fremont. What are you going to do?
Right. Terrible. It's a rough spot, man. Theodore Grievous, he was scratching his head over how Fremont, an Army officer, thought a Navy guy like Stockton could shield him from getting in hot water for disobeying his higher-up, Kearney.
Right.
He says it's kind of wild Fremont banked on that, but Grievous also points out that the whole messy clash between Kearney, Stockton, and Fremont might have been avoided if they had better ways to communicate back then. Just imagine if they could have shot each other a quick text or sorted out, or called them up on the phone or did a FaceTime or something,
Right.
I know you're a little mad, so I'll do a FaceTime. At least we can still see each other.
This is a little messed up, man. What are we doing here?
Come on, man. We're all we got the same goal in mind.
All right, roll Americans. After the whole court-martial mess, Fremont, he was dead set on clearing his name and getting back to his explorer vibes. And getting back to exploring in 1948.
1848.
In 1848, he teamed up with his old daddy-in-law, Benton, to push their big manifest destiny dreams again. Benton, he was into the idea of railroads and had been trying to get the Senate to fund one from St. Louis to San Francisco along the 38th parallel.
You're going to do it regardless.
Since both cities, they're just like straight across. When Benton couldn't get the government to pony up, Fremont found private investors to bankroll it instead.
Yep.
October 1848, he set off with 35 guys, headed up the Missouri, Kansas, and Arkansas rivers to scout the land. He brought along the Artist brothers, Edward and Richard, and Benjamin Kern, but this time he couldn't get his old trusty sidekick / guide, old Kit Carson.
Oh.
Kit Carson, he was busy.
Yeah, that's a bummer. When they got to Benton's Fort, pretty much every trapper there told Fremont, "Get the hell out of here, turn back, boy." There was already
worth it, man.
Right, there was already a foot of snow on the ground. The mountains were looking like a snowy nightmare. Fremont was like, I'm on a mission, baby, and I'm about to prove that a railroad along 38th parallel would work year-round, baby. So he hired Uncle Dick Wooten as a guide at Ben's Fort. He picked up the quirky old Bill Williams at what's now Pueblo, Colorado, and he kept on pushing along, kept on. Something you can't keep on a trucking, you keep on
keeping on
a galloping. If Fremont had stuck to Arkansas River, he might have pulled it off. But on 25th of November, what's now Florence, Colorado, he made a sharp turn south.
Ooh. By the time they crossed the Sangre de Cristo range through the Mosca Pass, they were dealing with brutal cold, blinding snow, and rough terrain. Some of the crew, including Wooten, they bailed, saying it was impossible to keep going. What are we doing?
Yeah, well, you know it's not good.
Well, tragically, Benjamin Kern and old Bill Williams, they got killed by Ute warriors while backtracking to find Garin survivors.
Oh, shit.
Even though the Sangre de Cristo passes were too steep for a railroad, Fremont's like, I know I can do it. Too stubborn to not do it.
Goodness. Well, they could have made it if they'd gone up to the Rio Grande to its source or taken a more northern route. But instead, they ended up at the top of Mesa Mountain. By December 12th, on Boot Mountain, it was so bad it took 90 minutes to move just 300 yards.
Jeez.
Mules started dropping dead, and by the 20th of December, only 59 animals were left. It wasn't until December 22nd that Fremont finally admitted they needed to regroup and get supplies. They started limping toward Teos in New Mexico territory. By the time the last survivors staggered into Teos on 12th of February, 1849, 10 guys had died. And the survivors had to eat them to stay alive.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Oh, wow.
If it wasn't for Alexis Godey's efforts, another 15 would have been goners. After recovering in Teos, Fremont and just a handful of his crew headed to California via a southern trade route. Well, Edward and Richard Kern, though, on a side note, they joined a military expedition with J.H. Simpson in the Navajos in 1849. They sketched some of the first real images of Arizona, New Mexico, and southern Colorado for the American public.
Nice.
Which included the Canyon de Chelly, Chaco Canyon, and the El Morro, which is now known as Inscription Rock.
Oh.
Despite the rough expedition, Fremont's rep as an explorer held up. In 1850, the Royal Geographical Society gave him their Patron's Medal for all of his exploratory work. Look at him, trying to make his name.
Jeez.
He said, I might not be a good military guy, but I can explore, damn it. Well, kind of.
February 10th, 1847, we're going back now. Fremont dropped $3,000, about 83 grand in today's money. He did that on a 70 square mile chunk of land in the Sierra foothills through a land speculator named Thomas Larkin. They called it Las Mariposas, or the butterflies. Well, this is because the monarch butterflies are flapping all around. The land used to belong to a former California governor, Juan Bautista Alvarado, and his wife, Martina.
Damn.
Fremont was hoping it was close to San Francisco or Monterey, but he was bummed to find out that it was way inland near Yosemite. Damn. Right on the Miwok Indians hunting and gathering.
Oh, no.
Ooh, that's even worse.
Well, after his 1848 court-martial, he moved to Las Mariposas and got into ranching. This is before his expedition, apparently. He borrowed cash from his father-in-law and Senator John Dix to build a house, corral, and barn. He even ordered a sawmill, shipped it over on the Aspinwall steamer Fredonia, and set it up at his house, at his land.
Right.
Then some Mexicans from Sonora tipped him off that there was gold on his land. Fremont, this dude suddenly got gold falling out of his pockets. A 5-mile quartz vein was spitting out hundreds of pounds of placer gold every single month.
Damn.
He just struck it rich.
Nice, good for him. 1851, Highland Hall, which was an ex-governor of Vermont, got appointed to head a federal commission sorting out Mexican land titles in California. He went to San Francisco to start the job, and his son-in-law, Trenner Park, tagged along. He's like, I want to go, Daddy. Fremont hired Park to manage day-to-day at the Las Mariposa. And they brought in Mexican workers to pay him for the gold, giving them a cut of the profits. While all this was going on, old Fremont, he also scooped up a big land holdings in San Francisco. He was living large in Monterey, working his gold ranch,
This guy.
drinking his whiskey, and fucking his women.
Well, he's got a wife.
It doesn't matter.
Well, it didn't last long because here comes the drama.
Oh, it's always got to happen.
Legal fights started popping off over property and mineral rights, of course.
Jeez.
Squatters rolled into Las Mariposas, mining gold like it was their own.
Oh, wow.
There was confusion about whether the 3 mining districts on the land were public domain, and the Merced Mining Company was straight up mining on Fremont's property, too. What the hell?
Shit.
On top of that, the land's borders were fuzzy because Alvarado had bought it on a floating grant from Mexico. Plus, they never even actually lived there, which Mexican law required.
Oh, wow.
All this got dragged through the courts for years until the Supreme Court finally ruled in Fremont's favor in 1856. It said, my gold is all mine.
Right. Wow. Well, winning that case, it allowed him to keep his fortune, but it pissed off a lot of his neighbors. In the late 1850s, Frederick Billings, a partner at the Halleck, Peachy, and Billings law firm, where Park worked, teamed up with Fremont on a few successful business deals. Good for him. Billings also tried to sell shares of Fremont's Mariposa mine in Europe, but kept striking out. When the Civil War came around, Billings stepped up as Fremont's agent, helping him buy arms in England for Union troops when Fremont took it upon himself to get involved.
Of course he did.
Oh, wow, look at this guy. Going to England and buying rifles.
Oh, before we get to the old Civil War, let's take a look at his short time as senator in California. November 13th, 1849. I guess it's way before the Civil War, but General Bennet Riley, without getting the green light from Washington, called for a state election to lock in California's new state constitution.
Right.
By December 20th, the California legislature was ready to pick 2 senators to rep the state in D.C. Fremont, he was the big favorite. He was a free soil Democrat, a Western legend, and seen by a lot of folks as the guy who got screwed over by an unfair court-martial, too. So let's give him his due and give him a senator spot.
Oh, well, the other guys that were running, T. Butler King, he was a Whig. William Gwynn, a Democrat. Fremont cruised to the first Senate seat, nabbing 29 out of 41 votes, while Gwynn, with some Southern support, he had 24 votes for second place. They drew straws to decide who got the longer term. Gwynn lucked out, leaving Fremont with the shorter one. Oh.
That's a hell of a way.
Right.
Oh, in Washington, Fremont, who'd bought his California ranch from, he pushed for a law that would have automatically validated Mexican land grants, but it didn't pass.
Of course not.
He also backed a shady law, which was nicknamed Fremont's Gold Bill, that would have stopped foreign workers from owning gold claims, which was super convenient since his ranch was in gold country, right? On the flip side, he had voted against tough penalties for people helping runaway slaves and supported ending the slave trade in D.C.
Okay. Good for him. Worrying about something that's 3,000 miles away. Back in Cali, the pro-slavery Democrats, known as the Shivs, were not fans of Fremont, and they backed Solomon Heidenfight to block his reelection. Fremont rushed back to Cali, even starting his own newspaper, the San Jose Daily Argus. He wanted to fight the Shivs, but guess what? The old racist Democrats couldn't beat them.
Right.
He couldn't pull enough votes to keep his Senate seat. Neither Heidenfeld nor T. Butler King, who was also running again, got a majority. So Gwynn, he ended up as California's only senator for a bit.
Oh, wow.
A year later, the Shiv-supported John Weller took the Senate seat from Fremont had held. And Fremont's time in the Senate was very short, just 175 days, September 10th, 1850 to March 3rd, 1851. And he only spent 21 actual working days in D.C. Hey, nothing's changed.
Sounds like a normal senator.
Right.
Well, in the fall of 1853, Fremont, he's back at it, heading out on another expedition to figure out if a transcontinental railroad along the 38th parallel could actually work. Okay, again, he and his crew bounced between Missouri and San Francisco, hitting up some known trails and a bunch of uncharted land. The big goal was to cross the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada in the dead of winter to see how much snow they'd be dealing with and whether a railroad could handle the winter trips.
Nope.
Fremont, he brought along Solomon Nunez Carvalho, who was a photographer. They called them back then the Guerrero typists, I guess. He said, come document the journey for us, buddy.
Yeah, that'd be nice. All right, they started off on the Santa Fe Trail, swinging by Bent's Fort before heading west into Colorado Santa Luis Valley. From there, they picked up the north branch of the Old Spanish Trail, crossed the Continental Divide at Cochetopa Pass, kept pushing into central Utah. Snow was no joke, though, guys. It was tough to follow the trail. Every now and then, they spot signs of Captain John Gunnison's expedition, which had come through just a few months earlier. Like, oh, I think they went this way.
There's firewood or something. Right. Weeks of brutal cold and heavy snow slowed them down. Big time.
Big time!
They had to ditch extra gear. One guy, he didn't even make it. By the time the worn-out crew stumbled into the Mormon settlement of Parowan in southeastern Utah, western Utah, February 8th, 1854, they were beat. Kicked back in Parowan for 2 weeks to get their strength back, then kept moving across the Great Basin, hitting the Owens Valley near what's now Big Pine, California. Big Pine, on the east side of the Sierra Nevada.
All right. Well, Fremont then led him south, across the Sierras, followed the Kern River drainage west into the San Joaquin Valley. Finally, on the 16th of April, 1854, they rolled into San Francisco. Fremont was stoked, having made it through a winter trek across the mountains. He was convinced a railroad along the 48th parallel could work, and that winter travel through the Rockies was doable.
He's like, if we could do it, then a train can.
Mm-hmm.
In 1856, at the age of 43, he became the first ever presidential candidate for the brand new Republican Party.
Look at that.
Which started in 1854. Republicans, they were all about standing up to the Pierce administration and stopping slavery from spreading into the West. Sure. At first, some big Democratic players like ex-Virginia Governor John Floyd and the powerful Preston family, they tried to get Fremont to run as their guy.
Ooh.
Fremont was like, nope, I'm all about free soil Kansas and against the 1850 fugitive slave law.
Oh, all right. Republican heavyweights like Nathaniel Banks, Henry Wilson, John Bigelow, they convinced Fremont to jump to their side. They wanted a fresh face and a united front. So at their June 1856 convention in Philly, they picked Fremont for president over other contenders, and they tapped conservative William Dayton from New Jersey for VP. Their campaign slogan, free soil, free men, and Fremont. Pushing for free homesteads and rallying against the slave power. Fremont, a.k.a. the Pathfinder, was a total rock star with voters and basically the face of the Republican Party. And then the Democrats, they went with James Buchanan.
Well, we know who won that one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Fremont's wife, Jessie, along with John Bigelow and Isaac Sherman, they ran his campaign like a bunch of pros. Jessie, being a senator's daughter, raised in D.C., she knew the political game way better than Fremont, obviously.
Right.
People treated her like a legit political boss, while Fremont came off as kind of a rookie, which he was. She got way more attention than most potential first ladies, and the Republicans hyped her up, calling her our Jessie. They ran a good campaign, but Jessie couldn't get her dad, Senator Benton, to back Fremont. What? Benton gave props to Fremont, but he ended up supporting Buchanan, which
he was
obviously
he's a Democrat. He ain't leaving his body.
Fremont was a little bummed out about. Well, Daddy, you helped me all through all this stuff. You couldn't even back me for my most important time in my life?
Right.
Wow.
Well, Fremont, like it was back then, none of the candidates, including Fremont, they never even hit the campaign trail themselves. That wasn't the vibe in the 1800s. They just sent people to do the dirty work.
Might as well.
He mostly stayed at his place on 56 West Street in New York City. The Republicans focused hard on 4 swing states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Indiana, and Illinois. They sent out big names to slam the Democrats for backing slavery and ditching the Missouri Compromise. The old Democrats, knowing the plan, went hard into those states too, running a nasty media campaign and even illegally naturalizing thousands of immigrants in Pennsylvania to boost their votes. Oh my gosh, are we reading about 2020?
As most campaigns do, this one got ugly. Democrats went low, attacking Fremont's illegitimate birth.
Wait a minute.
Jeez. And they spread rumors he was Catholic.
Ooh.
They trashed his military record and warned his win would spark a civil war.
Well,
Behind closed doors, there was wild talk that Fremont leading a huge army to back slave rebellions, slaves getting lynched, or slaves hoping for freedom and equality if he won. Meanwhile, Fremont's campaign was based near his home by the Clifton Ferry Landing in St. George, with big rallies on the lawn. It's now the corner of Greenfield Avenue and Bay Street.
well, in the end, Fremont lost to Buchanan in a three-way race on the 4th of November, 1856. Buchanan, 1,836,072 votes, 174 electoral votes, while Fremont pulled in 1,342,345 votes, 114 electoral votes. And old Millard Fillmore running for the American Know Nothing Party. He was the third guy. You got
something.
There's something there. Fremont won 11 states. Buchanan took 19. Fremont didn't even carry his home state, Cali. And the Democrats were just better organized. And the Republicans were scraping by on limited cash.
After the election, Fremont, he headed back to Cali and dove into his minded business.
Yeah, might as well.
As a state.
Cool, I'm still rich.
Right. At this time, people are saying it's worth a whopping $10 million, which is buku money today. When the Civil War kicked off, Fremont, he was over in Europe trying to drum up investors for his Las Mariposas gold ranch. President Lincoln thought about making Fremont the U.S. minister to France, figuring his French roots and his anti-slavery stance, which was super popular in Europe, would be a win.
Okay.
But Secretary of State William Henry Seward, he wasn't feeling Fremont's radical vibe and shut that idea down.
Ooh.
Instead, May 15th, 1861, Lincoln, he said, Fremont, I'll name you a major general in the Union Army. How about that?
Yeah, that'll work.
Well, Fremont got back to Boston from England June 27th, and by July 1st, Lincoln put him in charge of the Department of the West, which covered everything from the Appalachian Mountains all the way to the Mississippi.
Not west at all.
Just immediately, dude.
Once Fremont hit Washington, D.C., he sat down with Lincoln. General Winfield Scott talked strategy. Fremont came up with a plan to kick all the Confederates out of Missouri, then launch a big campaign down the Mississippi, aiming for Memphis. He later said that Lincoln gave him total freedom to run the show however he wanted, chatting about it right on the White House steps. Fremont's top priority as head of the Western armies was to hold Cairo, Illinois, no matter what. It was the key for the Union to push south along the Mississippi. I believe so. That makes sense.
All right, well, both Fremont and his subordinate, John Pope, they were convinced Ulysses S. Grant was the tough-as-nails general they needed to lock down Missouri. Fremont, he also had to deal with General Nathaniel Lyon, a real firecracker, whose aggressive, irregular tactics stirred up Missouri's messy mix of loyalties. That was a headache waiting to happen. Yeah, these two didn't get along.
July 25th, 1861, Fremont rolled into old St. Louis to officially take charge of the Department of the West. And guess what? It was a mess. The dude, 48 years old, he had gray hair. They say he was still a pretty good-looking man. And he was carrying his big rep as the Pathfinder of the West from his 11 years of mapping out the frontier. Look at this guy. His main gig, well, you guessed it. He kicked the Confederate forces out of Missouri.
That's what he was there to do.
But here's the deal. He was stuck in a slave state where a ton of folks weren't loyal to the Union.
Yeah.
So he had only a few Union soldiers, supplies, and weapons to work with. He's outnumbered.
Yeah.
Enemy territory.
As we know, Missouri, guerrilla fighting was popping off everywhere. Two Confederate armies were gearing up to take Springfield and maybe even try to invade Illinois to snatch Cairo. Fremont's job was huge, but his resources were slim. Missouri's secession crisis felt like it was spiraling out of control. He was tasked with protecting Missouri and the entire Northwest. No. On top of that, his mission was to pull together an army, get it equipped, lead it down the Mississippi, reopen trade routes, and cut off the western chunk of the Confederacy. Problem was, he only had 23,000 guys, and their volunteer 3-month enlistments were about to run out, and probably not many of them are coming back.
Some western governors sent in more troops, but Fremont didn't have enough guns to arm them. There were no uniforms, barely any gear. Soldiers were dealing with food rations, crappy transportation. And guess what? Worst of all, no paychecks.
No paychecks.
Make things worse, his intel was way off. His intel people were making him think that the Missouri militia and Confederate forces were twice as big. Here we go
What is
again.
up with these guys?
Had twice as big as they really were.
Well, when he showed up in St. Louis to take over the department, he brought this fancy aristocratic vibe that had folks raising their eyebrows and grumbling.
Oh, Longstreet, huh?
Right. Yeah, things got messy quick when he butted heads with Frank Blair, who was a big deal from the powerful Blair family.
I'm a big deal.
Plus, he was brother of one of Lincoln's cabinet members.
Oh, shit.
Blair, trying to control Missouri politics, started bad-mouthing Fremont to Washington, saying he was extravagant and running a command full of horde of pirates, ripping off the army.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. He had nothing.
That stirred up enough noise that Lincoln sent Adjutant General Lorenzo Thomas to check things out. He's like, what's he talking about down there?
Thomas came back. He said, well, Fremont was dropping the ball and making sketchy army purchases. Oh, shit. It blew up into a huge national scandal. Lincoln's like, come on, man, I need re-election. Fremont couldn't get a grip on the supply mess either.
He's like, come on, man, it's 1861. I need election.
Right.
Re-election.
A congressional subcommittee led by Elu Washburn, plus a later War Claims Commission, they dug into the Western Department and confirmed a lot of Blair's accusations. Yeah. They were, in fact, legit. Got ourselves a cowboy on our hands. Fremont was running his St. Louis headquarters like he was some European king. Maybe it was because he'd spent time in France before Lincoln gave him the job. He rented this swanky mansion for about $6,000 a year.
Jeez.
Paid for by the government. And yeah, it was guarded by Hungarian and Italian soldiers in flashy uniforms.
What?
Wow. Over in Italy?
No. In St. Louis.
Or in France?
It was in St. Louis.
What the fuck is Hungarian and Italian soldiers doing in St. Louis?
They ain't guard this for me.
Right.
I even put together a 300-man bodyguard of Kentucky guys. Pick for how good they looked. Fremont surrounded himself with his California buddies who were making bank by landing army contracts without the usual competitive bidding required by the law. Oh, look at this guy. One Californian got a deal to build 38 mortar boats. Build mortar boat, son of a bitch. And that was $8,250 each.
Which is about $100,000 nowadays.
At least, which is way more than they're worth.
Wow.
Another personal friend of Fremont's with zero construction experience. He scored a $191,000 contract to build forts that should have cost a third of that.
Oh, my God.
What are you doing, Fremont?
Fremont, what are you doing? Well, Fremont's go-to suppliers, they were getting insane deals for stuff like railroad cars, horses, mules, tents, and also gear. Most of it pretty low quality.
And paying top dollar, too.
Rumors even started swirling in D.C. that Fremont was planning to start his own republic or an empire out west.
Wouldn't doubt it.
His supply guy, you guessed it, Major Justice McKinstry. He also got heat for shady profiteering. Fremont's biographer, Alan Evans, he says a lot of this mess wasn't totally Fremont's fault. The Western Department was a brand new setup. No structure, no war supplies, and barely any trained recruits. Plus, the War Department, under Lincoln's first secretary, Simon Cameron, it was a hotbed of waste and corruption. Still, Fremont, he was in over his head with this one, boys.
Yeah.
Smokes.
Let's go. Back in May, this hot-headed regular army captain, Nathaniel Lyon, who we mentioned, he's out here acting on his own, leading troops to nab a legal Missouri state militia group camped in a St. Louis suburb. Things got ugly. Some civilians ended up dead during the raid.
Oh, shit.
Missouri hadn't officially ditched the Union yet, but Lincoln, he promoted Lyon to brigadier general anyway and put him in temporary charge of the Department of the West. Oh.
Lyon, he was all about flexing muscle to keep Missouri loyal. So he basically declared war on the succession-leading governor.
Something you shouldn't do.
Claiborne Jackson. He chased him all the way to the Ozarks. Lyon took over Jefferson City, which was the state capital, and he set up a pro-union government. But then he got himself stuck in Springfield with just 6,000 men, including Colonel Franz Sigel and his German Corps. Things were looking dicey, boys.
Well, that's when Fremont comes over and takes over the department. His top worry, he was keeping Cairo, Illinois, like we said. It was super critical for the Union's war plans out west, but it didn't have enough troops to fend off a Confederate attack. Fremont's forces were all spread out and disorganized compared to Confederates. He told Lyon to pull back from Springfield to Rolla and send extra troops to beef up Cairo instead of helping Lyon, who was begging for reinforcements.
Oh, shit.
Fremont, he wasn't totally off. He did have solid intel that the Confederates were they were going after Cairo eventually.
With 3 million men.
Right.
But being lion as lion does, he decided to go rogue. And he attacked the Confederate General Sterling Price at the Battle of Wilson's Creek, which we did, instead of retreating. It's a big mistake, though.
It was.
Because Lyon got shot through the heart, died on the spot.
He sure did.
Union line fell apart, kind of like the first Battle of Bull Run. And the old Confederates, they took the W. They grabbed Springfield and opened up a western Missouri for their advance. Fremont caught a ton of heat for the loss and for Lyon's death.
Yeah.
People were pissed that he sent troops to Cairo instead of backing Lyon's 6,000 men, who were just 10 miles south of Springfield. Serious trouble they were in. Tough call, but didn't land well.
Yeah, you should probably send reinforcements, guy. What an idiot. Well, with the Confederates and Missouri State Militia causing all kinds of trouble, Fremont, he was scrambling to hold it together. He started raising volunteer troops, buying weapons and gear off the open market. And he even sent his wife, Jessie, to D.C. to beg President Lincoln for more reinforcements.
Do what you got to do. Suck that man's dick.
Right.
But he's gay.
Have you seen his wife? Well, while he was juggling command of the Department of the West, Fremont needed a solid brigadier general to take charge of the Cairo post. At first, he was leaning toward John Pope, but his guy, Major McKinstry, suggested checking out this low-key brigadier general nobody knows yet, Ulysses S. Grant.
Fire, the best thing he's ever done. Look at that shit. Now Ulysses, he had a rep in the old army as a bit of a drifter and drunk.
Yeah.
But
Unfounded.
Right, but Fremont wasn't to judge him off rumors. He sized Grant up himself. Saw something different. He was a guy who didn't brag. He stayed steady. He had this iron will that just glowed off him when he walked into the room. So Fremont, he picked Grant and put him in charge of Cairo by the end of August of 1861. Right after that, Fremont sent Grant to Ironton with 3,000 green troops. He said, I want you to block a possible Confederate move by General William Hardee. He's coming. He's coming hard. He's got about 4 million men.
He's coming hardy. Then, just after a week after the disaster of Wilson's Creek, Fremont, he sent Grant to Jefferson City to keep it locked down from a potential attack by old Sterling Price. Grant rolled in, took charge like a boss that he is, drilling the troops, whipping them into shape, boosting supply lines, and setting up defenses around the city. Thanks to his work, Jefferson City stayed secure, especially since Price and his crew were already beat up from Wilson's Creek, and they ended up pulling back anyways. That's probably why they stayed secure. Grant, though, he's proven he was the real deal.
Ooh, with the old rebel General Sterling Price pulling back, Fremont, he said, here's our chance. We need to get aggressive. We're going to go on the attack, boys. He knew the real key to winning in the West was getting control of the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
Fremont, he decided to take on rebel General Leonidas Pope head on. He wanted to lock down the main stretch of the Mississippi. August 27th, 1861. In a huge moment for the Civil War, Fremont handed Ulysses S. Grant field command of a big Union offensive aimed at capturing Memphis, Vicksburg, and New Orleans. The goal, you ask? Well, he wanted to keep Missouri and Illinois safe from the old rebel attacks. By August 30th, Grant, he was officially in charge of the Union Army on the Mississippi. Fremont's go-ahead, Grant moved fast and took Paducah, which is in Kentucky, without even firing one single shot. This was after Polk had messed up by breaking Kentucky's neutrality and grabbing Columbus.
Yeah. Polk,
he
you guys remember, he messed around and did some shit in Kentucky, and Kentucky was like, we're going with the Union now.
He thought he can get away with that shit. Didn't get to it. Grant's move was so slick that it pushed the Kentucky legislature to stick with the Union. Guess what? That's a big win for the old Bluecoats.
We need as many states as we can get.
And they gave him as many bottles of whiskey as he wanted.
Fremont, he was itching to turn things around for the Union after he got hit hard at the Battle of Wilson's Creek and lost Lexington as well.
He's got something to prove.
He rounded up about 40,000 troops, set out to take back Springfield. October 25th, 1861, his forces, led by Major Charles Zagoni, this is the first time we're hearing this guy's name, he pulled off a win at the First Battle of Springfield. Maybe not, because we did that battle. It was the only Union victory in the West the whole year. So, as you can imagine, and 1861, that was littered with no wins, basically. So, obviously, it was a big deal here.
Yeah, the old Bluecoats getting their asses whooped. Well, on November 1st, Fremont, he told Grant he wanted him to stage a demonstration against Belmont, which was a steamboat landing across the river from Columbus. He said, I want you to try and push old Confederate General Sterling Price. I want him out in Missouri. Funny thing is, though, Grant had already wanted to hit Columbus earlier, but Fremont had shut down that plan. Wow. Now Fremont was giving him the green light. He goes, make some noise. Oh, Ulysses, as Grant.
Oh, U.S. Well, Fremont, he was in a real mess out in Missouri still. The Confederates had control of like half the state. Their guys, Price and McCulloch, they were ready to pounce any second.
Damn right.
Plus, we know about the rebel guerrillas. They're causing total chaos, derailing trains, cutting telegraph lines, burning bridges.
More ways than one.
Ravaging farms and attacking Union posts left and right.
Damn it.
It was bad. Yeah, who's that guy? Quantrill. Right. It was Raiders, dude.
Yeah.
The stronger slave-holding counties were full of Confederate sympathizers, and that needed to be shut down. Can't be having that. Thousands of Union loyalists were fleeing, totally broke, to Illinois, Iowa, and Kansas just to get away from the Confederate mayhem.
Damn right.
Fremont's radical buddies and his wife, Jessie, are pushing him hard to free the slaves of anyone supporting the Confederates. They're saying these guys are rebels. The Constitution doesn't protect them anymore, so we can legally take their property, including their slaves. Oh. Right? Yeah. Cease and desist, baby. Yeah. Seize it, shit.
Wow. So at the crack of dawn on the 30th of August, 1861, Fremont, he said, we're going for it, boys. Without even giving Lincoln a heads up, he declares martial law in Missouri.
Probably something you shouldn't have done.
Proclamation was intense. Anyone caught fighting against the old bluecoats would face a court-martial and possibly execution. Anyone helping the secessionists would lose their property. But here's the biggest one. Every slave of the rebels were immediately freed. The last part freaked people out. Like, what? They're not even humans. They're savages. Kentucky, which was still playing neutral, got super nervous. Unionists there thought this would push their state right into the old Confederate arms. Some folks in Louisville even begged Lincoln's buddy Joshua Speed to tell him there's not a day to lose in disavowing emancipation, or Kentucky is gone over the mill dam.
Right. Let them keep their slaves for now, guy. That's basically what he's saying.
You don't want to lose Kentucky.
Right. Well, Lincoln, he was sweating bullets, worried Fremont's move would make Missouri and other border states jump ship to the Confederacy. He asked Fremont to tone it down, but obviously by this time we already know Fremont's a stubborn guy. He sent his wife Jessie again to make his case to Lincoln, but Lincoln wasn't having it. He told her Fremont never should have brought slavery into this war. When Fremont still wouldn't budge, Lincoln publicly yanked the emancipation part of the proclamation on September 11th. He said, all right, you don't want to do it yourself? I'll come out and do it for you.
Wow. Well, as you would imagine, this pissed off Fremont's abolitionist friends who turned on Lincoln, making things even messier.
And this is where they split. Well, it's not even re-election time.
Right. On top of that, the old War Department put together a report calling out Fremont's screw-ups in Missouri, including how he arrested Frank Blair, which totally burned his bridge with the Blair family, who was even backing Lincoln for president backing Fremont for president back in 1856. Damn.
Fremont getting a little in over his head over here. Well, Lincoln finally had enough. He decided Fremont was done and sent his friend Leonard Swett to personally deliver the order, kicking Fremont out of his command to the Western Department November 2nd. That made a lot of radical Republicans up north furious, including some of Lincoln's old pals like Senator Orville Browning. Yeah.
Right.
Later, Lincoln privately admitted he felt for Fremont, saying the first guy to shake things up often goes too far and crashes.
That happens.
I admire you for shaking him up, but you got a little carried away, buddy.
Right.
He still thought that Fremont overstepped big time and put the Union in a risky spot. It's too early in the war to be doing that, guy.
After Lincoln gave old Fremont the boot, Fremont packed up from Springfield and headed back to St. Louis. On the surface, he was playing it cool. He acted like he was stoked to be free from all the stress of the command. But deep down, this guy, he was fuming. He's pissed. It's like, how these guys turn on me. He was convinced the old Republicans were totally botching the war and that the Blairs, with some seriously shady motives, they were the ones who got him canned. He thought Lincoln's,
probably.
Right. He thought Lincoln's decisions were straight up unfair. It got worse, though. Talk about adding insult to injury. His Zaguni guard got kicked out of the army without even getting paid. And every contract he set up was put on hold until Washington gave the green light.
It's rough.
Damn, that's tough.
Well, pretty soon, the radicals and Fremont's loyal supporters started making noise, pushing hard for him to get back in the game with a new command.
All right.
By March of 1862, Lincoln caved and put him in charge of the Mountain Department, covering parts of western Virginia, eastern Tennessee, and eastern Kentucky. But you could tell Lincoln wasn't exactly thrilled about it. He'd clearly lost faith in the guy they used to call the Pathfinder.
Oh, wow.
He said he ain't the Pathfinder no more. He's the screw-up.
Right. So, guess what? Fremont's, he's back in action. Teamed up with two other generals, Nathaniel P. Banks and Irvin McDowell. You guys know what their job was? You guessed it. They wanted to keep the Shenandoah Valley and Washington, D.C. safe. But instead of letting one guy call the shots, Lincoln and Stanton are micromanaging every move these armies are making. Confederate General Stonewall Jackson sees a split command and just pounces. He starts off picking each Union army one by one. This freaked out D.C. and Lincoln. They grabbed supplies and took thousands of prisoners. The Confederates were just dominating. It was a nightmare. Stonewall Jackson was just killing it.
Early June 1862, Fremont's chasing Jackson for 8 straight days trying to catch him. He finally does at the Battle of Cross Keys, going up against part of Jackson's force led by Richard Ewell. Fremont, he got about 10,500 Union troops, while Ewell's working with about 5,000.
All right.
But Fremont probably thought they had 50,000.
Okay.
Fremont's coming down the Valley Pike from the northwest through Harrisonburg. Another Union general, James Shields, he's closing in from the northeast, hoping to box Jackson in. Ewell, though, he sets up some seriously solid defenses to cover Jackson's western flank.
Okay.
Not today, boys.
June 8th, 10 a.m., Fremont sends its infantry, most Germans, and they kick off the Battle of Cross Keys, slowly pushing the old rebels back. The 15th Alabama Infantry holds them off for about a half hour. Then it turns into a long-range artillery slugfest, which we know the Union had upper hand. But the old Confederates, backed up by the 44th Virginia, they fought off a few Union attacks. Fremont, he goes all in with this big-ass assault. But the old Confederates, they said, you know what? We may look stupid, but we're dumb. They played it smart. They hold their fire. They held their fire until the Union soldiers are right in their faces. Then unleash a brutal volley that sent Fremont's guy reeling. If you guys listen to that episode, it's crazy.
Thousands of guns going literally off at the same time.
Insane. Fremont pulls back, decided not to try another attack. And the old rebels take over the ground the Union had held, doing their low, or whatever they did. Rebel yell.
Right.
Ewell's crew with a small brigade keeping Fremont busy. He got order from Jackson to fall back to Port Republic. Stonewall's like, buddy, we got it.
Well, the next day at that Battle of Port Republic, Fremont, he tried hitting Jackson's rear flank with some artillery, but doesn't go for a full-on assault this time.
Should have.
By the afternoon, Jackson's already moving his army out to Brown's Gap, way out of range of Fremont's guns.
Wow.
Somehow, Jackson and his whole army slipped out of the Shenandoah Valley and link up with Robert E. Lee in Richmond. Let him do it. Lincoln, he tells Shields and Fremont to pull out of the valley completely. Fremont catches a ton of heat again for being late to team up with McDowell at Strasburg, which let Jackson's army get away. It's not looking well for old Fremont right now. They put him back in command, and he's just failing.
Wow. 26th of June, 1862. They set up the Army of Virginia, and Fremont's Corps is supposed to be part of it, under John Pope's command. But Fremont, he said, no way, dude.
As I say, he was like, I commanded this guy.
He said, I'm a senior to this guy. There's no way. And he's got some personal beef, too.
Of course.
So he just bails and heads to New York City. He hangs out there for the rest of the war, waiting for another shot at a command. But nothing ever comes.
Dude, you bailed. Nobody's giving you shit no more.
Fast forward, 1863, war's taking a turn for the Union. Some African Americans in Poughkeepsie, New York, they get this big idea. They're like, you know what? Let's put together about a 10,000-man all-black army. We're going to call it Fremont Legion. We're going to go put Fremont in charge. They saw him as a hero because of that bold move back in August of 1861 when he tried to free slaves in Missouri on his own.
Oh, look at that.
But the whole Fremont Legion plan fizzles out. It goes nowhere. By June of 1864, Fremont realizes he's not going to get another chance to help the Union Army. So he says, you know what? I resign. I'm just going to collect my gold money.
Resigned. Then he decides to run for president in 1864.
Boo.
Obviously, it doesn't go well for him. Obviously, we know in 1860, the Republicans picked Abraham Lincoln. Fast forward to the next election, and he's running for re-election. But the radical Republicans, they're super pissed at Lincoln for mentioned or stuff we just mentioned. Mm-hmm. They think he's too soft on slavery and way too lenient about bringing the southern states back into the fold after the war. They're still holding a grudge from 1861 when Lincoln fired Fremont, for the emancipation. These radicals, on May 31st, 1864, along with some others, they formed the short-lived Radical Democracy Party. And, of course, they nominated Fremont, who's 51 years old, for president.
Oh.
Okay, Fremont.
Well, Fremont...
He's just looking to get embarrassing.
Right. Fremont had a solid crew backing him. Radical Republicans, German immigrants from out west, and war Democrats. This whole thing splits the Republican Party right down the middle. One side, you got the anti-Lincoln radicals pushing for Fremont. On the other, you got the pro-Lincoln Republicans sticking with old Honest Abe. Now that Abe had actually stepped up his game on slavery by issuing the Emancipation Proclamation on 22nd September 1862, which he was pretty forced to do because they were getting their ass kicked, which went into effect on the 1st of January 1863 by freeing the slaves forever in the Confederate States. But the old radicals, they still aren't satisfied. Fremont, he sees the writing on the wall and reluctantly drops out of the race on the 22nd of 1864 in September. The very next day, what looks like a planned deal, Lincoln boots the more conservative Montgomery Blair from his cabinet to smooth things over.
He's like,
oh, he got rid of Blair.
Like, all right, Fremont, you drop out and just stop fucking hassling me with this, and we'll get rid of Blair. All right. Jeez. In 1864, John and Jesse, they buy a state ranch in what's now Sleepy Hollow, New York, from James Watson Webb, who was a big shot newspaper publisher. They named the place Pocahoe, which is an Indian name, clearly. For Jesse, it's all about getting back that peaceful, charming vibe of country life, especially since John's done with politics.
Okay.
The house is still standing at 7 Pocahoe Drive in Sleepy Hollow, but it's a private home now. Of course it is.
Beautiful. February 1866, 1 year after the war. Missouri takes over the Pacific Railroad because the company could not pay its debt. And in June that very same year, the state sells it to Fremont in a private deal. He shakes things up as he always does. He goes, you know what? I'm going to rename this the Southwest Pacific Railroad. But less than a year later, in June of 1867, the state snatches it back from Fremont because guess what? He couldn't cover the second payment. Then the Panic of 1873 hits. Total chaos from too much gambling on railroads. And the depression that follows just guts at whatever money Fremont's had left. Things get so tight that him and Jesse, they had to sell their estate in 1875, and they moved back to the city in New York.
Well, fast forward a few years, 1878, President Rutherford B. Hayes, he makes Fremont governor of the Arizona Territory. He's there until 1881, but barely shows up. They tell him either get to work or in person or quit. And Fremont's like, I'm gone then. Well, I don't need this.
No good.
By this point, the family's flat broke. And they're leaning hard on Jesse's earnings from her writing to get by.
Having all the gold money.
Why does this guy make a memoir? Right. Fremont spends his retirement on Staten Island. April 1870 at 77, he gets a nice gesture from the government as they reappoint him as a major general and put him back on the payroll.
Oh.
Well, the guy got his pension.
Look at that shit.
It's just like they did with Grant.
Well, 13th of July, 1890, dead from peritonitis. He died at his house on 49 West 25th Street in New York. It was sudden. Nobody really knew he was even sick. The previous Tuesday, which was the 8th of July, the crazy hot summer day, it got to him. He was sweating. He was out of breath.
Probably nauseous.
Right. By that next day, on the 9th of July, he had a chill. He couldn't get out of bed. Turned out to be peritonitis, which was an abdominal infection. Took him out.
Cut him down.
Crazy, dude. Probably just some antibiotics.
Right. Nowadays, yeah. Wow. Indigestants or something.
Right. Everybody knew him as the Pathfinder of the Rocky Mountains. He was first buried at Trinity Church Cemetery, but on the 17th of March, 1891, they moved him to Rockland Cemetery in Sparkle, New York. After he died, Jessie got a Civil War pension that paid her $2,000 a year, worth about $70,000 now.
That's crazy.
Tough end for a guy who lived such a wild life.
You know? Well, Fremont's legacy is such a wild mix. Yeah, we've heard it. It's like he's both a hero and a villain, depending on who's telling the story.
You got to be, right?
On one hand, he was huge in opening up the American West for white settlers. But he did some shady things as he ordered and took parts in attacks on Native Americans.
Yeah, dude, he fucked them up.
Killing men, women, and children, pushing them off their land. Over time, he became a big player in what people later called the Native American Genocide, especially in California, where his actions helped drive the so-called California Genocide. Yeah, he was just slaughtering people.
Wow. Back in his heyday, people loved him. They called him the Pathfinder, as we said
for the 500 million time.
He was basically an American rock star. His detailed maps, his stories, scientific notes from the expeditions were like GPS for the folks heading west, starting their new lives in the 1840s. A lot of people thought he got a raw deal when he got arrested and court-martialed by Kearny during the Mexican-American War, but they got over it. During the Civil War, His win against the Confederates at Springfield in 1861 was the only bright spot for the Union in the Western Department that very year.
Sure did.
Yeah, they got their ass kicked everywhere.
And then he got sacked from the Mountain Department in 1862. And obviously, his role in the war fizzled out. We saw him, dude. His one probably good thing he did was put Ulysses S. Grant and promoted him in 1861. Why are we talking about this again? Fremont, he also dumped a ton of money into the railroads, but as we just said, the Panic of 1873 wiped him out and basically killed him.
Just looked worn out and old, I bet.
Killed him.
People still
had nothing to do.
Right,
money,
right.
no money, penniless.
Right. People still remember old Fremont. They remember him for planting the American flag in the Rocky Mountains on his first expedition, like he was claiming the West for the United States or for himself. Plus, a bunch of plants are named after him because of all the botanical stuff he recorded.
Sure are.
There's even a big statue of him at Pathfinder Regional Park near Florence, Colorado. Oh, here's a fun fact for you guys. He even came up with the name Golden Gate for the strait between Marin and San Francisco in his memoirs.
Oh, look at that.
The Golden Gate Bridge.
His biographer, Alan Nevins, he got some good things to say about Fremont. He said 2 things stood out first when he looked at his life. First, his life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
You ain't kidding.
It was a roller coaster of epic highs and brutal lows, full of storms and sunshine. Second, how could someone who nailed it so hard sometimes crash so spectacularly? Yeah. Nevins, he thought Fremont got his impulsive, brilliant streak from his emotionally messed up parents. But they also pushed him to lean into his reckless, adventurous side without teaching him the discipline and needed to keep it in check. Yeah, once he got out there was no holding him back.
You ain't kidding. Lincoln had his own take on Fremont, though. He thought Fremont was honest, but he made a huge mistake by shutting everyone out. He wouldn't even let anyone get close or tell him what was really going on. This screwed him up.
Surrounded by a bunch of yes men.
A lot of historians nod along with Lincoln on that one.
Yep.
Then there's this ugly incident there in the Bear Flag Revolt, 29th of June, 1846. Fremont. He said, I want you to kill that California named Baricia and his 2 nephews on the shores of San Rafael. Rebecca Solnit points to this as a shady moment that marked California's rough road to statehood.
Yeah, it might have even cost Fremont votes in California when he ran for president as Republican in 1856 because he didn't even win that state. The killings themselves aren't up for debate, but why it happened is. Some say Fremont's crew was getting revenge for 2 of their guys killed by the Californios, I guess the Mexican version. Others think Fremont mistook the De Haro brothers for soldiers.
Oh.
One theory even says it was straight up racism from the white bear flaggers.
Probably was.
And Berryessa and his nephews might have been seen as Native Americans, which we already know they were slaughtering those guys on sight.
You ain't getting.
So no matter how you slice it, pretty messed up on his part.
Shouldn't fuck was. John and Jesse Fremont had 5 kids. The first, Elizabeth Benton, they call her Lily, born in Washington, D.C. on the 15th of November, 1842. She lived a long life, passing away in L.A. on the 28th of May, 1919. Then there's old Benton Fremont, born in Washington on the 24th of July, 1848. Well, he didn't even make it to his first birthday, as most of them did.
Not.
He died in St. Louis. Then you had John Charles Frémont Jr., born in San Francisco, 19th of April, 1851. Well, he had a solid career in the Navy. He served from 68 all the way to 1911.
Wow.
He even made it to Rear Admiral.
Rear Admiral.
He commanded the monitor USS Florida from 1903 to 05. He also worked as a naval attache.
Attache?
He also worked as a naval attache in Paris and in St. Petersburg from 1906 to 1908. He led the battleship USS Mississippi from 1908 to 1909. Wrapped up his career as commander of the Boston Navy Yard from 1909 to 1911. Sadly, he passed away in Boston, March 7th, 1911. Then you got their last child that they had. It was Anne Beverly, born in France on February 1st, 1853. Well, she only lived for 5 months. Oh, no, she wasn't the last.
No.
Because there's the last. Francis Preston, born on the 17th of May, 1855. He made it to September 1931 when he died in Cuba.
Died in Cuba, huh?
Damn, 74, something like that.
In addition to nearly 2 dozen plants, cities, streets, buildings, and geographical features named after him, other commemorations include the prehistoric Fremont culture, named after the Fremont River where it was first found. 1898, the U.S. put Fremont on a commemorative stamp as part of the Trans-Mississippi issue, which was a big deal back then. Yeah, 1898, you got out a stamp. That's how you make it. You know, I'm on a stamp.
Right.
Then during World War II, they named the SS John C. Fremont, a Liberty ship after him. It was laid down May 24th, 1941, launched September 27th, 1941, and was the first Liberty ship delivered by a West Coast shipyard. Sadly for that, though, just like John Fremont, his career hit a mine in Manila Harbor in 1945 and gone.
You got the Fremont cannon, this massive, crazy expensive trophy. It's a replica of a cannon Fremont took on his 1843-1844 expedition through Oregon, Nevada, and California. It's the prize for the annual college football showdown between the University of Nevada, Reno, and UNLV. This is bragging rights, boys. Oakland, California.
Interestingly enough, isn't UNLV the Rebels?
Yes. Yep. Oakland, California, there's a Fremont monument in Joaquin Miller Park, marking this very spot where he first laid eyes on the San Francisco Bay. Then you got Fremont, Nebraska. They got the Pathfinder Chorus, which is a barbershop named after him.
Barbershop Quartet Group. They're singers.
Oh, right. Then you got the Fremont Pathfinders Artillery Battery, which was a Civil War reenactment crew.
Awesome.
Cool.
The U.S. Army's 8th Infantry Division, which isn't active anymore. It was nicknamed the Pathfinder Division after him. Their crest had a gold arrow called the Arrow of General Fremont. And during World War I, they were based at Camp Fremont in Menlo Park, California.
Oh, fuck yeah.
In 2000, Fremont, he got a big nod when he was inducted into the Wall of Great Westerners at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum.
Fuck yeah, dude.
2013, the Georgia Historical Society, they put up a historical marker at his birthplace in Savannah. And in 2006, they also launched this award-winning website called the 1856 Handbook, diving into Fremont's first presidential campaign and the world around it.
Damn, this guy. Look at this guy. Good for him. Fucked up, had it rich, died broke.
Probably the only guy we've covered so far that did more or is more known outside of the Army than the shit he did with the Army.
All right.
Which is kind of crazy, but yeah. The Explorer, Fremont the Explorer. We're not even going to talk about his Union stuff because he did nothing, basically. So,
Basically, no.
yeah, he was an explorer in my eyes. So. So John Fremont and his story, another classic waste all your money after you get out of the Army story.
Yep.
So, that's it. Next week we'll be back for some random rebel guy. Maybe Polk or maybe Sterling Price, somebody either or. We'll be back for more behind the battles of the American Civil War. We are the Mother Michigan.